In our project, we wanted to talk about peer pressure. Specifically, what are the effects of peer pressure on adolescents and risk-taking? Our group consisted of Sarah, Kaylee, and Daniel. So we wanted to start with what is peer pressure. Peer pressure begins around the ages of 11 through 13, which is also the same age when puberty is starting, which makes the choices to fall into this peer pressure harder to resist because they have a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings at this time. It's also influence from members of one peer group. It's the effect on an individual who is encouraged and wants to follow their peers by changing their attitudes, values, or behaviors to conform to those of the influencing group or individual. This is also known sometimes as peer influence. So there's two different types of peer pressure. We're going to start with positive peer pressure. Positive peer pressure is when someone's peer influences them to do something positive or growth building. Some examples of this would be pushing a friend to study harder so they can get better grades, getting an after-school job and convincing friends to get a job too, or disapproving of bigoted jokes or gossiping. Other example of this could be also stopping someone from bullying or other reasons like that. The other type of peer pressure is negative peer pressure. So negative peer pressure is when certain behaviors or actions occurs that negatively influence and can possibly damage our health or future. A couple examples of this would be trying to talk someone into taking drugs, cigarettes, or alcohol, cheating or copying someone else's work, or bullying others for peer approval. So adolescents can experience peer pressure at home, school, and anywhere else they can feel pressured to do something. This could be by peers or other adults in their life. It can be a reason to fit in with a certain group of adolescents, such as school, church, or other activities they participate in. It could also be a reason to gain approval of others, even if it means doing something risky or unsafe. Advantages in adolescent cognition lead to comparisons with others and concern for what others think. In terms of socialization, peers have a strong influence on individuals as peer approval and disapproval. It's extremely powerful during adolescence. Adolescents strive for even the potential possibility of peer approval. Meanwhile, the potential disapproval or rejection from peers is quite painful for them. Adolescents are most likely to be responsive to the immediate reward or peer approval signals, leading them to participate in impulsive and risky behaviors while downplaying any potential consequences of these behaviors that we found in our research. So the presence of peers increases risk-taking. The ventral striatum in the adolescent brain is hypersensitive and result controls and increases sensation, seeking and reward sensitivity, especially in terms of social rewards. Motivation to achieve these rewards are very, very strong at this time. Adolescents are sensitive to the potential reward value of risky decision-making as they rely on peer support and seek that peer approval. The potential social reward that individuals can get from peers increases the likelihood that they partake in risk-taking behaviors. Social reward processing disrupts impulse control. So a study that we learned about in class that we also talked about in our group is the spotlight game. So the goal of this game was to make it to the end as fast as possible. During the game, there are 20 intersections with a yellow light. If you decide to stop, there is a short delay. If you decide to go through, there is either no delay or a crash, which invokes a longer delay. The risk-taking part of this was that the amount of intersections that the participant decides to run through and the total number of crashes that they got into altogether. The findings of this were adolescents took more risks and got in more crashes when a peer was observing compared to when they were by themselves. A couple of other studies that we looked into was the balloon analog risk task. The goal of this was to inflate 30 balloons and earn points as fast as possible while avoiding popping the balloons. So the more balloon pumps you used, the more points you would get when you were blowing it up. If you were allowed the balloons to be pumped up too much and popped, though, no points would be rewarded. The risk-taking part of this would be the amount of balloons that the participant pops. We also found that in this case, adolescents took more risks and popped more balloons when a peer was observing compared to when they were alone. This also happened in the guess gambling game. Our overall findings from these different games in our research was that the results of all three studies conclude that the presence of peers increases adolescents' likelihood of engaging in more impulsive and risky behaviors. So we also looked into male and female peer pressure differences. Females are more eager, they have more eager needs for social acceptance, and it becomes extremely popular, which is why peer pressure can become hard to resist when the adolescent is striving for this approval and acceptance from their peers. Females are also more likely to fall into peer pressure if it means they will fit in more with a wanted group or individual. The impact of friendship is an extremely important part of females' adolescence, so they are more likely to fall into the behavior their friends are to keep them happy and around. In males, we learned that boys are more likely to engage in risky negative behavior around peers because of peer pressure than females were. Boys who showed disruptive behavior at a younger age showed more delinquent behaviors when they got older. This was also linked that if a boy was friends with another boy and they partaked in risky behavior, if they grew up together, they would also do this. One of the main reasons that they think this is because of the strict gender roles that there are in society. These males could be trying to fill the shoes that they think society is giving to them and fit into a category of a tough guy. So the fact that we want you to remember the most is peer pressure is known to cause adolescents to act in risky behaviors in both sexes, even as they got older. A quote that we thought was very interesting by Lemony Snicket is this: "If you try to avoid every instance of peer pressure, you will end up without any peers whatsoever. And the trick is to succumb to enough peer pressure that you do not drive your peers away, but not so much that you end up in a situation in which you are dead or otherwise uncomfortable. This is a difficult trick, and most people never master it, and either end up dead or uncomfortable at least once in their lives." Thank you very much, Daniel, Kately, and Sarah.